I'll only warn you once. Get ready. Colorado is wilder, stranger, and far more mind-blowing than you could ever imagine. And when you get to the stories at the end, you'll know exactly why I say this. 33. The Norwegian Grandpa on Ice. High in the town of Nederland, there is a shed that holds a resident who has not drawn a breath in decades. This is the story of Bredo Morstol, a Norwegian man who passed away in 1989 and was subsequently frozen in dry ice by his grandson Trygve Baug. Trygve brought his grandfather to Colorado in 1993, dreaming of a future where cryogenics might bring the old man back to life. When Trygve was deported for overstaying his visa, the town discovered they had a frozen corpse in a backyard tough shed. Instead of panicking, the townspeople embraced the oddity and created an annual festival called Frozen Dead Guy Days. For years, a local caretaker known as the Iceman hauled nearly 2,000 pounds of dry ice every month to keep Grandpa Bredo at a steady negative 109 degrees Fahrenheit. 32. The Cannibal of the San Juans. In the brutal winter of 1874, a man named Alfred Packer led 5 prospectors into the unforgiving San Juan Mountains in search of gold. Weeks later, Packer emerged alone at the Los Pinos Indian Agency, looking suspiciously well-fed and carrying a pocket full of money that did not belong to him. When the snow melted, the grisly remains of his companions were found, showing unmistakable signs that they had been used as a source of nourishment. Packer eventually confessed to eating them, though he claimed he did so in self-defense after another member of the party went mad. He was convicted of manslaughter and became a macabre folk hero in the state. Today, the cafeteria at the University of Colorado Boulder is even named the Alfred Packer Grill, a bit of dark humor that shows Colorado residents never forget a good story or a hungry traveler. 31. The Inspiration at the Stanley Hotel. In October of 1974, a struggling writer named Stephen King and his wife arrived at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park just as it was closing for the winter season. They were the only guests in the cavernous 140-room building. While wandering the empty, echoing corridors, King felt a palpable sense of unease that sparked the idea for his masterpiece, The Shining. He stayed in room 217, where he supposedly had a dream about his son being chased through the halls by a fire hose. The hotel was built by Freeland Oscar Stanley, the inventor of the Stanley Steamer automobile, who moved to the area to treat his tuberculosis. While the hotel was never actually haunted in the way the book depicts, the staff and guests have reported strange piano music and the laughter of children for over a century. Before continuing, be sure to subscribe and leave a like to keep discovering the strange and incredible history of our entire country. 30. The Bird That Lived Without a Head. On a September afternoon in 1945, a farmer in Fruita named Lloyd Olson went out to the yard to fetch a chicken for dinner. He chose a young Wyandot rooster named Mike and swung his axe, but the blade missed the jugular vein and left the brainstem intact. To Olson's absolute shock, the headless chicken did not die. It stood up, shook its feathers, and tried to peck for food. Realizing he had a miracle on his hands, Olson began feeding Mike grain and water through a dropper directly into his esophagus. Mike lived for 18 months without a head, gaining national fame and touring the country as a sideshow attraction. He eventually reached a weight of 8 pounds and was valued at $10,000 before he unfortunately choked in an Arizona motel, leaving behind a legacy that Fruita still celebrates today. 29. The Unsinkable Spirit of Margaret Brown. Most people know her as Molly Brown, the hero of the Titanic, but in Denver, she was a powerhouse of social reform and grit. Margaret Tobin Brown moved to Leadville at 18 and married a miner named James Joseph Brown, who eventually struck a massive vein of gold. This sudden wealth allowed Margaret to move to a mansion in Denver, though the local elite often turned their noses up at her new money. When the Titanic hit an iceberg in 1912, Margaret took charge of lifeboat number 6, demanding that the crew return to the debris to search for survivors. She used her fame and fortune to advocate for workers' rights and literacy, proving that her character was as resilient as the ships she survived. Her home on Pennsylvania Avenue remains a testament to a woman who refused to be told no by society or the sea. 28. The Woman Who Fought a Rattlesnake Army. In 1925, a homesteading nurse named Kate Slaughterback was out on the plains of Weld County with her young son when they encountered a literal carpet of rattlesnakes. Realizing her son was in danger, Kate grabbed her rifle and began firing, but she soon ran out of ammunition. Undeterred, she grabbed a nearby wooden sign and used it as a club, battling the migrating pit vipers for over 2 hours. By the time the dust settled, Kate had killed 140 rattlesnakes. She didn't couldn't let the carcasses go to waste either. She fashioned the skins into a spectacular flapper-style dress that she wore to local events. This feat earned her the nickname Rattlesnake Kate and cemented her status as one of the toughest pioneers in the West. Her famous dress is still on display today at the Greeley History Museum for all to see. 27. The Great Diamond Hoax of 1872. Two weathered prospectors named Philip Arnold and John Slack walked into a San Francisco bank in 1871 with a bag of raw diamonds, claiming they had found a massive field in the desert. They were so convincing that they managed to dupe some of the wealthiest men in America, including Charles Tiffany and several prominent bankers. The investors were taken on a blindfolded journey to a remote spot in the northwest corner of Colorado, where they found diamonds and rubies scattered on the ground. However, the whole thing was a masterful scam. The pair had purchased low-grade gems in London and salted the earth to make it look like a natural deposit. The fraud was eventually exposed by a geologist who noticed that diamonds and rubies do not naturally occur in the same type of rock. By then, the duo had already vanished with hundreds of thousands of dollars. 26. The Invisible Knockers of the Deep. If you ever find yourself wandering through the abandoned silver and gold mines of Central City or Idaho Springs, you might hear a rhythmic tapping against the stone walls. In mining folklore, these are the Tommy Knockers, mischievous spirits brought over by Cornish miners in the 19th century. These creatures were said to be about 2 feet tall, dressed in traditional mining gear, and were known for both saving lives and causing trouble. A series of knocks could be a warning of an impending cave-in, while 3 knocks might signal the location of a rich vein of ore. Miners would often leave a portion of their lunch, usually a piece of a Cornish pasty, as an offering to keep the spirits happy. Even today, many people in the old mountain towns believe that these spirits still guard the dark tunnels that honeycomb the Colorado Rockies. 25. The Face on the Barroom Floor. Deep within the Teller House in Central City, there is a haunting painting of a woman's face directly on the floorboards of the bar. For decades, tourists believed the face was the subject of a famous 19th century poem by Hugh Antoine Darcy, which tells the story of a tragic artist who dies after painting his lost love. In reality, the face was painted in 1936 by a local artist named Herndon Davis. After a disagreement with the hotel management about his work, Davis snuck into the bar in the middle of the night and painted the portrait as a final defiant gesture. He used his wife, Edna Juanita, as the model for the beautiful ethereal face. The management was initially furious, but when they realized the painting drew in crowds of curious visitors, they decided to keep it, and it has remained a Colorado landmark ever since. 24. The Silver Queen of the Smuggler Mine. In 1894, a group of miners at the Smuggler Mine in Aspen made a discovery that would go down in the annals of mining history. They unearthed a massive nugget of native silver that was so large they had to break it into pieces just to get it out of the shaft. The largest single chunk weighed an incredible 1,840 pounds and was nearly 93% pure silver. At the time, Aspen was the leading producer of silver in the world, and this find, dubbed the Silver Queen, was proof of the valley's immense wealth. While the nugget was eventually melted down, its discovery boosted the morale of a town struggling with the recent repeal of the Sherman Silver Purchase Act. The Smuggler Mine itself remained one of the longest operating mines in the region, standing as a monument to the silver boom that built the mountains. 23. The Tragedy at Milk Creek. The year 1879 marked a turning point for the Ute people and the settlers of the western slope. Nathan Meeker, an idealistic but rigid Indian agent, attempted to force the Utes to abandon their nomadic lifestyle and take up farming. His efforts to plow under their horse racing tracks led to a boiling point of tension. When the United States Army was called in to intervene, a fierce battle broke out at Milk Creek. Major Thomas Thornburg and several of his soldiers were killed in an ambush by Ute warriors led by Chief Colorado. Back at the agency, Meeker and his staff were also killed in what became known as the Meeker Massacre. This event directly led to the forced removal of the Utes from their ancestral lands in Colorado to reservations in Utah, an outcome that changed the demographic and cultural landscape of the state forever. 22. The Mile High Step of the Capitol. In the bustling heart of Denver, there is a staircase made of granite that leads up to the west entrance of the Colorado State Capitol. For over a century, visitors have paused on the 13th step, which bore the carved inscription stating it was exactly 1 mile above sea level. However, science has a funny way of correcting the past. In 1969, a group of students from Colorado State University used more modern methods and discovered the original measurement was slightly off. They installed a brass plug on the 15th step instead. Then, in 2003, using sophisticated satellite technology and the global positioning system, experts found yet another true mile-high mark on the 18th step. Today, you can see all three markers, which serve as a humble reminder that even the most solid facts of the past can shift when the tools of the future arrive. 21. The Curse of the Blue Mustang. If you have ever flown into Denver International Airport, you have likely been greeted by a 32-foot-tall blue stallion with glowing red eyes that stands on its hind legs. This fiberglass beast is officially named Mustang, but locals affectionately call it Blucifer because of its somewhat demonic appearance. The story behind its creation is genuinely tragic and adds a layer of eerie mystery to the sculpture. In 2006, while the renowned artist Luis Jimenez was working on the final pieces of the horse in his studio, a massive section of the sculpture fell and pinned him against a steel support beam. The accident proved fatal as the heavy limb severed an artery in his leg. His sons eventually finished the work to honor their father, but the horse continues to glare at travelers with those haunting neon eyes, a permanent monument to a creator who died for his art. 20. The Ransom for Buffalo Bill. The legendary showman William Frederick Cody, known to the world as Buffalo Bill, passed away in Denver in 1917. While he had expressed a desire to be buried in Cody, Wyoming, the city of Denver and his widow decided he should be interred atop Lookout Mountain to overlook the plains. This decision sparked a bitter feud between the two states that lasted for decades. Legend has it that the citizens of Wyoming were so incensed by the theft of their namesake that they offered a reward for the return of his body. There were even rumors of clandestine plots to drive to Colorado and dig him up under the cover of night. To prevent any post-mortem kidnapping, the Denver authorities had to bury Cody under several tons of solid concrete. Even now, some folks in Wyoming claim the body in the mountain is a decoy and the real Bill is elsewhere. 19. The Silver Queen's Lonely Vigil. Elizabeth McCourt Tabor, famously known as Baby Doe, was once the most envied woman in Colorado, living a life of unimaginable luxury with her silver magnate husband Horace Tabor. When the silver market collapsed in 1893, their massive fortune vanished almost overnight. On his deathbed, Horace supposedly told Elizabeth to hang on to the matchless mine in Leadville, convinced it would one day yield wealth again. Elizabeth took his words to heart and spent the next 36 years living in a tiny one-room shack at the entrance of the abandoned mine. She became a local recluse, wrapping her feet in burlap to stay warm and surviving on the charity of neighbors. In the winter of 1935, she was found frozen to death on the floor of her cabin, a tragic figure who had traded a life of glamour for a decades-long vigil over a hole in the ground. 18. The Fortress of Frozen Dreams. In the winter of 1896, the citizens of Leadville decided to combat their economic depression by building a massive palace made entirely of ice. It was a staggering architectural feat covering over 5 acres of land and featuring walls that were 8 feet thick. The palace included a grand ballroom, a skating rink, and even a restaurant where the furniture was carved from solid blocks of frozen water. Thousands of tourists flocked to the high-altitude town to witness the shimmering fortress, which was lit from within by glowing lanterns. However, the dream was short-lived. An unseasonably warm spring arrived early, and the magnificent structure began to weep and crumble. The financial losses were devastating, and the palace was never rebuilt, remaining a glittering but melancholy memory of a city that tried to freeze time to save its soul from the biting winds of poverty. 17. The Maverick of the Red Rocks. John Otto was a man who saw the towering red monoliths of Grand Junction and decided they were his life's mission. In the early 1900s, he lived as a hermit among the canyons, carving trails into the vertical sandstone using nothing but hand tools and sheer willpower. He wrote endless letters to Washington, D.C., demanding that the area be protected, often signing them from the bottom of my heart and the top of my head. His eccentricity was legendary. He once convinced a woman to marry him at the base of a massive stone tower, but she left him just weeks later because she could not handle the rugged outdoor lifestyle. Thanks to his relentless pestering of the government, President Taft finally declared the area the Colorado National Monument in 1911. Otto became its first custodian, earning a salary of just $1 per month for his efforts. 16. The Phantom Sails of 1897. Long before the Wright brothers took to the air at Kitty Hawk, the people of Colorado were looking at the sky in total bewilderment. Throughout the spring of 1897, hundreds of residents across the state reported seeing a massive cigar-shaped airship with wings and brilliant searchlights cruising through the night. Reports came in from Denver, Colorado Springs, and even remote mountain mining camps. Witnesses described a metallic hull and the sound of distant voices drifting down from the clouds. While some skeptics claimed it was merely the planet Venus or a collective hallucination, the sheer number of detailed accounts from reputable citizens was staggering. Some even claimed the pilots of the craft landed to ask for water or repairs. Whether it was a secret inventor testing a prototype or something far more mysterious, the Great Airship Mystery remains one of the most unexplained chapters in the history of the high plains. 15. The Desert Ships of the Rockies. It sounds like a tall tale from a desert mirage, but for a brief time in the mid-19th century, camels actually roamed the rocky terrain of the American West. Following a strange experiment by the United States Secretary of War Jefferson Davis, dozens of camels were imported to be used as pack animals for the Army. While the experiment was mostly centered in the Southwest, several of these dromedaries made their way into Colorado with surveying parties and mining expeditions. The camels proved to be remarkably hardy, but they had a nasty habit of spitting at soldiers and frightening the local horses and mules. When the Civil War broke out, the project was abandoned, and many of the animals were sold to circuses or simply released into the wild. For years afterward, bewildered gold seekers reported seeing ghost-like camels wandering through the sagebrush of the Colorado River basins. 14. The Celestial Weeper of Mount Shavano. High on the slopes of Mount Shavano, one of the famous 14,000-foot peaks, a giant figure of a woman appears every spring as the snow begins to melt. Known as the Angel of Shavano, the image is formed by the deep snow remaining in the mountain's crevices, creating a perfect silhouette of a winged figure with her arms outstretched. Local legend tells of a Ute princess who was so heartbroken by a terrible drought threatening her people that she went to the mountain to pray to the Great Spirit. She offered her own life in exchange for the survival of her tribe, and as she passed away, she was transformed into the snow angel that brings life-giving runoff to the valley below every year. To this day, many residents of Salida look toward the peak as a symbol of hope and sacrifice during the spring thaw. 13. The river that ran through a mountain. At the dawn of the 20th century, farmers in the Uncompahgre Valley were facing a desperate water shortage while the powerful Gunnison River roared through a nearby canyon, completely inaccessible. The solution was an audacious engineering project, a 6-mile-long tunnel cut directly through the base of a mountain to divert the water. The work was incredibly dangerous, as miners faced scalding underground springs, pockets of lethal gas, and constant cave-ins. It took 4 years of grueling labor, but in 1909, President William Howard Taft traveled to Colorado to open the gates. When the water finally flowed through the Gunnison Tunnel, it transformed a parched desert into some of the most fertile farmland in the nation. It was the longest irrigation tunnel in the world at the time, and remains a triumph of human ingenuity over the formidable barriers of the Rocky Mountain landscape. 12. The Silent Resident of St. Elmo. St. Elmo is often called one of the best preserved ghost towns in the West, and much of that is thanks to a woman named Annabelle Stark. Long after the gold mines dried up and the trains stopped running, Annabelle and her brother stayed behind in the decaying wooden town. She lived there for decades without electricity or running water, acting as a self-appointed guardian of the empty buildings. Locals whispered that she would patrol the dusty streets with a rifle to ward off vandals and looters who tried to strip the town of its history. Even after she passed away in 1960, visitors to the local hotel have reported seeing a thin, pale woman looking out from the upper windows, or feeling a sudden cold draft in the middle of a warm afternoon. Her dedication to the town was so absolute that many believe her spirit simply refused to leave. 11. The UFO Watchtower in the San Luis Valley. The San Luis Valley is a vast, high-altitude basin that feels like another planet, so it is only fitting that many believe visitors from other worlds frequent the area. Since the late 1960s, this region has been a global hotspot for unidentified flying object sightings and mysterious cattle mutilations that defy any conventional explanation. One local woman, Judy Messeline, even opened a UFO watchtower to provide a dedicated space for enthusiasts to scan the horizon for shimmering lights. Visitors frequently report strange craft that dance across the Sangre de Cristo Mountains before disappearing into the thin mountain air. Some researchers suggest the valley's unique geology or its proximity to top-secret military bases might be the cause, but for the locals, the presence of the unknown is simply a daily reality in the silent desert. Before moving on to story number 10, remember to subscribe and like to become an expert on the history of our wonderful country. 10. The Ghost of the Tabor Grand Opera House. Horace Tabor did not just want to be wealthy, he wanted to bring high culture to the rugged mining camps of the West. He built the Tabor Grand Opera House in Denver, a magnificent structure that was once considered the finest theater between St. Louis and San Francisco. While the building was eventually demolished in 1964, the spirits that inhabited it supposedly moved to his other theater in Leadville. Witnesses have long reported seeing a ghostly figure, believed to be Horace himself, wandering the stage or sitting in the darkened balcony. He appears as a shadowy man in a frock coat, eternally watching for the return of his beloved baby doe. This lingering presence serves as a haunting reminder of the fleeting nature of silver and fame, proving that some legends refuse to exit the stage. 9. The Loyal Donkey of Fairplay. In the town of Fairplay, there stands a stone monument to a resident who never spoke a word but earned the respect of an entire community. This was Prunes, a hard-working donkey who spent 63 years hauling heavy supplies and ore for local miners. Prunes was a fixture of the town, known for his incredible endurance and his uncanny ability to navigate treacherous mountain passes during the worst blizzards. When he finally passed away in 1930, the townspeople did not just bury him. They erected a permanent memorial to honor his service. Prunes represents the millions of pack animals that truly built the infrastructure of the West, working alongside pioneers and sharing in the hardships of the high country with a quiet, stubborn dignity that remains a legendary part of Colorado's mining heritage. 8. The Tragedy of the Ludlow Tent Colony. The history of Colorado is not all gold and glory. It also contains dark chapters of struggle and sacrifice. In April of 1914, a dispute between striking coal miners and the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company turned into a bloody tragedy known as the Ludlow Massacre. The miners and their families were living in a tent colony when the Colorado National Guard opened fire on them. During the chaos, a fire swept through the camp, leading to the deaths of 21 people, including children who had taken shelter in a pit beneath a tent. This horrific event shocked the nation and became a rallying cry for labor rights across the United States. Today, a somber monument stands at the site, marking the spot where families fought for dignity in the shadow of the southern foothills. 7. The Gold Within the $1 Million Highway. The stretch of highway between Ari and Silverton is often called the $1 Million Highway, and the name is much more than just a marketing gimmick. One popular legend suggests that the filled dirt used to build the original roadbed was actually rich in low-grade gold ore. It was said that the gravel was worth $1 million, meaning drivers are literally traveling over a fortune every time they brave the hairpin turns. Others claim the name comes from the staggering cost of construction in such an unforgiving vertical landscape. Regardless of the gold in the dirt, the road offers some of the most breathtaking views in North America, with no guardrails to separate travelers from the sheer drops that plunge thousands of feet down into the rugged and beautiful Uncompahgre Gorge below. 6. The Singing Sands of the Great Sand Dunes. If you stand perfectly still among the towering peaks of the Great Sand Dunes National Park, you might hear a low vibration that sounds like a distant choir. This phenomenon is known as the Singing Sands, and it occurs when grains of sand slide against one another, creating a unique acoustic frequency. Colorado's dunes are the tallest in North America, and the sound they produce can be surprisingly loud, sometimes reaching the intensity of a booming thunderclap. Scientists have discovered that the specific shape and moisture content of the sand grains allow them to resonate in a way that few other places on Earth can match. It is a haunting, natural music that makes the desert feel alive, as if the mountains of sand are whispering the ancient secrets of the San Luis Valley. 5. The Frozen Swarm of Ice Mountain. Hidden high in the peaks of the Colorado Rockies is a strange geological feature known as a grasshopper glacier. This is not an ordinary river of ice. It contains millions of perfectly preserved migratory grasshoppers that were trapped during a massive storm centuries ago. Located on Ice Mountain, the melting ice occasionally reveals the dark, frozen bodies of the insects to intrepid hikers. Researchers believe that a colossal swarm was caught in a sudden downdraft and frozen instantly, creating a biological time capsule that dates back to the late 13th century. The sight of prehistoric bugs emerging from the ice is both fascinating and eerie, offering a glimpse into a natural disaster that occurred long before any settlers arrived. It is a chilling reminder of how the sudden fury of mountain weather can freeze time. 4. The buried loot of the Reynolds Gang. During the height of the Civil War, a band of Confederate sympathizers known as the Reynolds Gang terrorized the trails of Colorado, robbing stagecoaches to fund the Southern cause. After a particularly successful series of heists, the gang was pursued by a local posse through the territory near Kenosha Pass. Legend says that as the law closed in, the gang buried their stolen loot, a massive haul of gold coins and dust, somewhere in the dense forest. While the leaders were eventually captured and executed, the secret location of the treasure died with them. Over the decades, countless hunters have combed the area looking for the cached gold, but the mountain has refused to give up its prize. The story remains one of the state's most enduring mysteries, fueling dreams of hidden fortunes beneath the pines. 3. The birth of the teddy bear. In the summer of 1905, President Theodore Roosevelt visited the Hotel Colorado in Glenwood Springs for a hunting trip. During his stay, the president was reportedly discouraged after a long day without success. To cheer him up, the hotel maid supposedly stitched together a small bear made of scraps of fabric and presented it to him. Roosevelt was so delighted by the gesture that he carried the little bear with him, and the story quickly spread through the national press. This charming event is often cited as the inspiration for the creation of the teddy bear, a toy that would soon become a worldwide sensation. While other cities also claim the origin, the Hotel Colorado remains fiercely proud of its connection to the Rough Rider and the soft companion that has brought comfort to children. 2. The Great Denver Fire of 1863. In the early hours of April 19, 1863, a fire broke out in a Denver bakery that would change the face of the city forever. At the time, Denver was mostly a collection of wooden shacks, and the flames spread with terrifying speed through the dry streets. By the time the sun rose, the entire business district had been reduced to smoldering ash, leaving the young settlement in ruins. However, the citizens were resilient. Instead of giving up, they passed an ordinance requiring that all future buildings in the city center be constructed of fireproof brick or stone. This decision gave birth to the beautiful red brick architecture that still defines the historic districts today. The fire was a baptism by flame that transformed a flimsy frontier outpost into a permanent and enduring American metropolis. 1. The revolutionary vote for suffrage. While many states were still struggling with the concept of equality, the men of Colorado did something revolutionary in 1893. They went to the polls and voted to grant women the right to vote, making Colorado the very first state in the Union to approve women's suffrage through a popular referendum. This historic victory was the result of a tireless campaign by activists who traveled across the state to convince miners and farmers that equality was the path forward. The success in Colorado provided a vital spark for the national movement, proving that the frontier spirit was not just about individualism, but also about justice and progress. It is a proud legacy that reflects the state's tradition of independent thinking and its role as a leader in the fight for a much more perfect union. After watching these 33 stories about Colorado, tell us, did you know any of them? Which one did you like best? Or which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Let's see how many of us share the same story, and if you think we've missed something or want to add something, we'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps us improve each video. Also, if you noticed any pronunciation mistakes, thank you for your patience. We strive to improve with every video. And speaking of videos, there's another one playing right now so you can continue exploring the history of our beautiful country. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next one.